Welcome to the GangboX podcast, episode 16, all things Vegas, all things union, all things construction. We have a special guest today, the current Senate Majority Leader, Nicole Cannizzaro.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here with you guys.
Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So you're running for Attorney General.
Sure am.
Obviously, you are the sitting Senate Majority Leader. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah. So, I'm born and raised here in Vegas. So all things Vegas. I'm all things Vegas.
Yeah.
But I'm born and raised in Vegas. My parents were a bartender and a waitress. They lived in Buffalo, New York. They were looking for a place where bartenders and waitresses. Yeah. Bart, my dad.
Yeah.
Bartolomeo. Bart.
He used to serve me up shots back in the day at the old Glitter Gulch.
Well, he actually worked at it was the Holiday Inn, then Harris. But he was lucky. He had a really long, stable job there, right? He was a culinary member.
Nice.
He worked there for, close to maybe a little more than 30 years. And my mom worked on and off the Strip for a while. When they first moved here, she was a culinary member as well. And then eventually moved off Strip and worked in restaurants. But that's what my parents did, right? They just worked hard every day. That's what I knew that they did. They went to work every single day. They had to, right? They put on a uniform. They went to work. And I am the oldest of three girls. And I remember when I first started going to school, my dad worked the swing shift. My mom worked lunch. And that way everybody, somebody was always home with kids and somebody was always working. That's how they balanced the childcare part of it. And then, here and there, assistance from some of the other families that lived in the apartment complex. And I remember when I first started going to school, my dad would sometimes have to pick me up on his way to work and drop me with my mom so that he could get to work. She would be finishing up. And at the time, she worked at this little cafe. It was called the Gourmet Cafe. And it was just in downtown Vegas. And it was just down the street from the old courthouse. And so she served lunch to lawyers. They would come in, they would wear their suits, they would have their yellow legal pads, and, I'd see them kind of coming into this cafe, and I thought, man, those people are so cool. What did they do for work?
Yeah.
They did something so different from what my parents did every single day. My mom's like, well, they're lawyers. And I was like, they're cool. That's what I want to do.
Wow.
Lawyers are not cool. We're not cool people. But
nerdy usually.
Very nerdy. But that's what I wanted to do. And, I feel lucky because my parents had stable jobs, right? They had healthcare. We had healthcare. My dad for sure had a stable job the whole time. And, my mom sometimes not so much, especially when she wasn't union, right? So when people talk to me about why do you care about unions? It's because I watched some of that practicality play out with my own parents. And, I went to school. I'm a graduate of Chaparral High School. Cowboys. And I earned a Millennium Scholarship. And at the time, I'm one of the first classes of Millennium, right? So at the time, it was paying $80 a credit, and credits were $82. So, that's how I figured out this is how I'm going to make college work. Because I was working at the restaurant. I was working then at the restaurant that my mom worked at.
Really?
I was a hostess. I was a busser. And I was like, man, how am I going to make college work? How am I ever going to afford college?
Right.
I'm just going to wait tables my whole life because I'm never going to afford college. And that made it, that made the math work for me. I was like, oh, this is how I'm going to make it work. And so, my first job was working right alongside my mom. I watched how hard she worked every day. And I went to college up in Reno, worked in restaurants up and through and into law school, but graduated from the University of Nevada, Reno. So I am a Wolfpack fan. And earned a degree in business and came back down to UNLV. So I'm also a UNLV Running Rebels grad.
Good.
And I earned my law degree at the William S. Boyd School of Law.
That's good shit.
It was really cool to, and I share that story a lot because I think, when people ask me, why did you get into public service? There are so many points along that way that there are reasons why I was able to succeed because there were people who cared about kids like me serving in office and doing things like making sure we were funding education and that I had a good teacher in my classroom who was making sure I stayed out of trouble and doing my work.
Yeah.
I had, a scholarship to go to college so I could do what I wanted to do, which what I wanted to do was be a lawyer.
That's good stuff.
And, I watched how unions kind of supported my family. I began my law practice at a small firm. I was there for a few months, decided that was not what I wanted to do, moved over to the district attorney's office shortly thereafter, and had an 11-year career at the DA's office, most of that as a chief deputy district attorney, a lot of that in the gang unit. So I was doing big racketeering cases, gang cases, really complex and interesting
Who was
things.
the DA then?
Steve Wilson.
He was? Okay.
Yeah. He hired me in that office because when I first started in the office, I actually worked as a law clerk. So I was in the appellate unit doing criminal appeals. And then I moved over to the juvenile side of the office. So I've worked in actually many of the only place I didn't work in that office was in civil and in family support. So I worked in the juvenile department. I did a lot of the child welfare cases and then some of the juvenile delinquency cases, most of that doing cases where young kids, most of them women, most of them girls, were being trafficked. Oh. And, we ended up encountering them in that way. But I think the one thing I did like about being in that part of the office was that we had, kind of a holistic approach to how you deal with those cases. So we would work with, social workers and other folks who were advocates in trying to get young kids out of trafficking and out of prostitution and, kind of back into school and finding a way to rebuild their self-worth and, kind of stop that. And so, anyway, I did that at the office and then I moved to the criminal side. And when I moved to the criminal side, Steve Wilson was the DA.
That's good stuff. Well, there's a couple things there.
Yeah.
You went good 7-minute run. Thank you for that. Make our jobs easy.
Yeah.
No, just but UNR, man, that like there's that big weird rivalry internally between like UNLV, UNR, and it's funny that it doesn't stop at the schools. Like it bleeds into the legislature, which is fucking crazy to see the two lobbyists go. But I think there's two extraordinary things why I like UNR. I like UNLV too, but I'm a huge UNR fan because of you and Mike Flores. And everything else doesn't really matter when it comes to UNR. So it's good to have a little bit of both. But no, I think it's funny I'll sit in the legislature and I'm like, God, even the fucking it's fucking crazy, bro.
I'll say this. And I'll try not to get too emotional. My very dear friend Joyce Woodhouse, who recently passed, was like a diehard UNLV fan. And so her and I had a nice banter back and forth because I would give her a hard time about the Wolfpack. And then I remember, when UNLV would win a basketball game, there would be UNLV stuff all over the office and everybody be wearing red. And, I think at the end of the day, oh, man, I'm going to miss her. At the end of the day, in the legislature, I've tried to make sure that we stay really focused on, if you're a kid, right, and you're like, hey, man, I want to go to college. And not every kid is, I want to go to college. But if you are a kid in Nevada who wants to go to college, you should be able to go to a world-class higher educational institution. And that doesn't matter if we're talking about UNLV or UNR or you're talking about Nevada State, right? We have really good institutions here, and we have to be invested in having all of them. And it can't be one to the detriment of the other, right? We have to give kids an opportunity to succeed. And so I've always tried to approach it, even though I'm over here giving Joyce a hard time about the Wolfpack, and she's giving me a hard time about the Runnin' Rebels when they're playing each other in basketball. We're supporting all of our institutions and trying to give kids a pathway so that, kids like me have a chance and have a fair shot. Because I think that at the end of the day, that's what people want. As a parent, that's what I want.
Yeah. Oh, it's good. I think Joyce was a huge anchor for you, and she's going to be missed. Fucking rest in peace, Joyce Woodhouse, for sure. I can't even imagine all that. But more positive note, I don't know. Were you going to say something?
No. Go ahead.
Oh. So, I don't know. Anything's more positive than that, talking about sad stuff. But we cry a lot on this podcast, too, or afterwards when the cameras go off, because...
I believe that.
Yeah, me and Daniel, sometimes we'll get in a friend circle outside on the couches there.
Everyone needs emotional support. You know what I mean?
We got it.
We're definitely that.
Yeah,
Fuck, did you just see our recovery night? Oh my
I did.
God.
No, it's funny that you say that because I called Daniel. I was chatting with him and I said, I saw all the photos from that.
Yeah.
And that was incredible.
It was awesome.
So
that's amazing, right?
We try not to have elected officials there so that
the
members can get a little vulnerable.
Totally.
But this year one of the guys who kind of helped us talk about putting together recovery night to just share awareness with the members about mental health, substance abuse, and what programmings the unions have in place with your insurance, talking about union insurance, right?
Yes.
And so the guy's name was Mark Reynosa. He's a great guy. He played football at UCLA. He came up with the term industrial athletes. That's what construction workers are. We're industrial athletes with no season off. Our bodies are constantly getting beat.
Yes.
And, so there's an opioid addiction. And that's where the opioid addiction comes from, to numb the pain. And then, it goes into a whole spiral of fucking problems for construction workers. He passed away late last year of a brain tumor. And so what we did is Daniel came up with the idea to give away the, what was it called?
Mark Reynosa Recovery Champion Award.
Yeah. So any contractor, anybody who is helping us in our mission to spread the message of the help that's there for people in need.
Yeah.
They earned the award. And so Mark's wife came and she literally gave the eulogy that she gave at his funeral. And fuck, you want to talk about crying? Oh, yeah. Holy shit. Not a dry eye in the room. Mm-hmm. So you have all these tough construction workers, and it's badass to show. And I got up there, and you know me, I'm fucking already super emotional. Every time I've introduced Nicole publicly, I've fucking cried. I swear to God, at all of our dinners and everything. I've always cried, bro. But it's funny. It's funny because there I got up and then I was just like, this is like a huge reminder. Like, here today, gone tomorrow. And like on the mic, on the stage, I was just like, man, I'm taking a personal point of privilege to just tell my fiance I fucking love you. Like, thank you. Like, I want the world to know, and I don't give a fuck if anyone else knows, but when something touches that deep, man, I learned to not hold back anymore. Yeah. You know, it's amazing.
Think about what a incredible impact you're having on people's lives, right? Like, the world is tough. Yeah. Right? And we can be honest about that.
Shitty.
Right? Like, life is not easy, right? It's not all sunshine and rainbows. Like, life is tough. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's hard to deal with the ups and downs. And so, you know, if you're giving somebody like some hope or like a place to release that, like, how incredible is that?
Well, it's awesome. I mean, when we go to these job sites, we do the job site safety stand downs, and you know, we stand in front of sometimes 100, 200 construction workers on these big jobs. And when we're talking about mental health and substance abuse, you know, you have some guys that are like, oh my God, what are we doing here? You know, and that's fine. But there's a large portion of those workers that you can tell they are engaged, they are listening. Right. And, you know, Vince, you know, just recently did a talk where he kind of talked about blue collar workers and how we're kind of treated. And he nailed it on the head, man. Like, you know, we wake up before the sun. We're out there. You know, it's funny. I took my daughter with me to the gym this morning before work super early. And
is it like at 2 a.m.?
Well, we went at 4. We were at 4 a.m. And so we're driving to the gym. And I told her, I said, listen, she's 16. I said, when you're ready to start finding a guy and you want to find a good guy, I go, see that 7-Eleven? 4 o'clock in the morning. Those are where the good guys are. You know what I mean? They're in there, they're buying Monster Energy drinks, and they're going to work.
Yes, Monster Energy drinks,
I go,
for sure.
The dudes at the club at 2:30 in the morning, not the good guys.
No. Not the guy
you want. You know, that guy, that 7-Eleven is packed full of dudes going to work. Yeah. You know what I mean? Before the sun comes up. And, you know, it's tough. You know, the workflow, the ups and downs of the workflow, particularly in this area. You know, Las Vegas is known for boomer busting. And, you know, that up and down stress, and the hard work and, you know, the painkillers, it tears people down. And that's why we have such a high suicide rate in our industry. And that's why we go to the legislature and ask for projects, you know what I mean, to be done so that our members can continue working.
Well, I mean, and it's interesting, right? Because at the legislature, I always say, you know, we bring these bills and we're like, yeah, it's going to be jobs for folks. And every time I have sat at the table at the legislature and all of you guys are back there, right? I've said this, in fact, when we were doing, I want to say maybe it was Senate Bill 226. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to say it was maybe that bill. It might have been a different bill.
I remember this.
I think it was
know what
this
you're
one.
Going to say,
We're sitting at the table, and it's in the afternoon, right? So we've been legislating all day. People are there, right? There's lots of guys in suits, girls in suits, right? Everybody's there doing their legislative stuff. And then there's a whole bunch of guys who, like, are fresh off the job site, right? Came in their boots, came in their jeans. And I remember sort of being struck by that because here we are sitting at the table. I'm always kind of down, right, to fight for working people. Because my parents were working people, right? Nobody was here, like, cheering my parents on, like, for going to work every day. Right. But they were taking care of us, you know? And there were times where it was very hard. There was times where you didn't have a lot to eat. There were times where it felt like scary, and someone would lose a job. That's really hard.
Right.
And so for me, it's always been part of this public service has always been like, how do we fight for regular people, working people who are good people, who are taking care of their kids, who are getting up every day and going to work, no matter how hard that is. And so we're sitting at the table and we're talking about this bill that says, we're not going to get around prevailing wage requirements by, structuring these loopholes that allow us to not pay what we have to pay.
Sure.
And everyone's like, oh, well, it's going to be so expensive and, all these jobs are going to cost more and da-da-da. And then all these guys came up, right? And they're testifying in support. And they're just like regular, good people.
Yeah.
Right? And they're there and they're like, this would really help me. I really hope you pass this bill.
Yep.
This would really help my family. I hope you really pass this bill. And I was struck because, then we go through the whole opposition of it all. There's always opposition to these bills.
The ABC.
Which
I fucking hate that guy.
Here's
What's
the
his
deal.
name?
Warren Hardy.
Warren fucking Hardy.
You don't have to hate him. Daniel does. Clip that.
Warren is a nice guy.
No,
but I think, I think that the argument is tough, right? Because they're like, well, it's going to cost more. My argument to that is you have to pay people, right? You have to pay them. You have to give them health insurance. You can't ask them to do these jobs for the bare minimum because they're dangerous, because they're hard, because they require expertise.
Mostly because most of you motherfuckers can't do what we do.
I can't.
No, not you.
Right. The closet rail in my house, literally 2 days ago, fell.
Yeah.
It's still on the floor.
Yeah, like, well, that's going to live there forever.
Yeah. I guess I'm just going to fold all these clothes and keep them in a pile on the floor because, I can't fix it. Yeah. And so, but I respect that. I think coming from a working family, you just have that perspective. And so I remember in my rebuttal, I was like, look, we're always going to hear that this is going to be too expensive, that we couldn't just possibly. But for all of these guys who went to work all day, they went to work all day. They worked their asses off. And they worked hard. Hard jobs.
Real work.
Yeah.
Hard fucking jobs, right?
Yeah.
And they came up here and they said, I just want to keep working.
Yeah.
So can you help make sure that I can take care of my family? How do we say no to that? How do we tell these guys no?
Yeah, and if it's cost more money, then that's the cost of doing business. And the state shouldn't be paying for construction projects based off the fact, well, if we pay slave labor wages, we can get it a lot cheaper. Well, of course you can. You're paying slave labor wages. And these people that are the opposition, right? So Warren fucking Hardy. I don't know how they sleep at night.
Poor Warren.
I sit in negotiations with contractors, not so much our little contractors are fine, but with the casinos, right? These massive corporations. And I look at the attorney across and I think to myself, when you go home at night, you're like, man, I did a good job today. I made sure these fucking painters didn't get, an extra 15 cents.
15 cents an hour.
I know when I go to sleep at night that I am fighting for the working class. I am fighting for the little guy. I am fighting.
That's Nicole, bro.
Right. I know you share that with me. How do these other motherfuckers live? How do they go to sleep?
I think they think about it very differently, right? And that's why we have to make the case to them. I mean, we shouldn't, right? Because we should all recognize when people work hard, they should be paid a fair wage, right? They should be able to have access to health care. I mean, I try to always, that's why I always try to talk about sort of not only just my upbringing, right? But my husband's whole entire family was UAW workers for generations. Mm-hmm. My sister is a union member. I was a former union member. And while it's not the same as construction work necessarily, it's still hard work, and it's still tough and you got to get up every day. There's no option to not go to work. I always tell people there was no option for my parents. When we were sick, they were like, well, you have to go to school. Yeah, there's not an option for you to just stay home. You're 6 years old. I can't just leave you here by yourself all day. And I don't have a babysitter or the money to pay a babysitter. Right. I have to go to work. So you gotta take some Dayquil or Dimetap it was, not Dayquil, but Dimetap. And you gotta go to school. And so
I think,
I think, we have to, I'll say two things. Number one, we have to continue to tell people why this matters, right? Because they're looking at it from here's a bill that's going to get passed at the legislature and here's how much it's going to cost and here's what that might, impact might be over time. But you have to say at some point, that is worth it, right? And at the end of the day, I've also always made the case and Vince has heard this from me a number of times, you actually, in the long term, end up paying less because the job is done on time. There are fewer change orders. It's done properly. It's done where you don't have as many safety issues, right? Like, it's done by highly skilled, highly qualified workers who are going to show up and get it done. And so from an efficiency standpoint, you know, there is, I think, something from the bottom line piece of it. And that's why we fought so hard for, you know, skilled and union jobs.
Yeah, right.
And so I think that's part of it. And I think the other part of it is they're like, yes, we're elected officials, right? And like, I wear my suit a lot, right? Because I'm at the legislature. I'm a lawyer in court. But at the end of the day, like, I'm still a kid who had working parents. I'm still somebody who worked in and out of restaurants for years, you know, bussing tables, taking out the trash, running the dishwasher, prepping food, serving people food.
Right. Yeah.
And I didn't forget any of that.
Right. Fuck no, you didn't. And I thank you for that. And that's why, you know, a lot of folks, I think, it's funny because you weren't a privileged child growing up. And I think that that's why we get along so much. A lot of people, like, I don't understand, like, what's the connection between Nicole and Vince? And they're trying to put the pieces together. And I'm like...
We just keep them guessing, you know?
Yeah, well, here's the truth. You don't get it because you don't come from this fucking life. You don't come from this life. Or if you did, you forgot where the fuck you came from. Nicole Cannizzaro has never forgotten where the fuck she came from. She will continue to always fight for working fucking families. Yeah. And this isn't some commercial or shitty fucking pitch. Yeah. But when you have somebody who's really about it, who could appreciate their parents and their upbringing, the struggles, and you could appreciate the fucking struggles, like, this is what you get. You get somebody who superseded their parents' expectation, who was doing big fucking things in the state. And it's fucking amazing, bro. And that's why I've always had Nicole's back. I'll always have her fucking back because she's always had ours because she's never forgotten where the fuck she came from.
Well, and that's the challenge that we have, right, is we have to make sure that our members know that.
100%.
Right? And so we have to educate our members, and everyone is so caught up on Democrat versus Republican that we're trying to break that. And the way we talk to our members now is like, look, which people in the legislature, regardless of their party, are fighting for working people, right? Are fighting for us.
Yes.
And it's just tough to separate because it's so ingrained in our society and our culture.
It is. And I think that that's unfortunate because at the end of the day, there's so much of that is common ground, right? Like, yes, I do think that kids should go to the doctor when they're sick. Yes? Yes. Sure. You think parents should be able to take their kids to the doctor when they're sick, right? You don't want to question that. As a parent, and you could talk to people, right? As a parent, if your kid is sick, the only thing you want is to find somebody to make them better.
Right.
And that is the only thing that you want. And it's the only thing you should care about. And so I think, like, we can agree on that, right? We should also agree that, like, if somebody works hard every single day, they show up to work every day, they work hard every single day, they should take home a paycheck.
Yeah.
Like, we agree on that. We have to find some of these ways in which, like, we agree on the fundamentals and the values. So let's figure out how can we satisfy those while putting forward good legislation, right? Mm-hmm. But you have to, like, you kind of have to dig into some of that, I think, to get to that point. And that's why, you know, every time we've talked about labor legislation in the legislature, it has always been, like, this is not about, like, I'm Nicole Cannizzaro and I'm running this bill, so you have to vote for it because, you know, I have also had bills die at the legislature. Sure. I know that's shocking to folks, but I have had bills die at the legislature. For me, I always come at it as, this is not about, like, me or Vince, right? This is about all of these guys in the back, right? Wearing their boots, wearing their jeans, showing up, you know, outside of work hours to say this matters for me and it matters for my family. Because they're not...
For hours, showing up for fucking sitting there waiting for hours. And they don't understand the process. Yeah. So they're just sitting there.
Yes.
And I feel like shit because I'm like, sorry guys, they said the hearing was going to be at 2.
It was going to be at this time.
Our bill's not going to be here till fucking 6:30 at night. But and they're sitting there all dirty and they fucking write it out, bro.
There.
Yeah, it's badass.
And then there's the opposition, right? And
but they're
and I want my members to see the opposition. Like, that motherfucker over there doesn't want you, because it's personal to me. And
it should be,
and
right?
it is because, like, I know my members. Yeah. And I talk to them and I meet them
every day.
I meet their spouses and I meet their children and I know their struggles. And so for me, it is very personal. So when a legislature stands up there and pushes the button against us, to me, it's not like, well, you know, I need to win my next election or I got to cover my base over here. Like, to me, it's a personal attack on my membership, and I get very passionate about it because it's people's lives that are affected. So when Warren fucking Hardy goes up there and talks his shit,
Warren is a nice guy. Warren is a nice guy.
Not to me.
I know.
Because he stands in the way of my members having the lives that they deserve.
And look, I agree with that. Like Warren and I disagree on this issue, right? All the time.
Right.
All the time. And I think, but I also think like, right, we can disagree on the issue. And I can also say like, I like Warren Hardy. He's a nice guy.
I'm too petty
so
for that.
I know that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah. But look, I think that at the end of the day, you do need your members, right, to see the opposition so they understand
who the enemy is.
But they also have to understand like why this has been a fight, right? Because people think like, oh, well, you voted for labor legislation. That was easy. It's never easy.
Right.
I have never brought a labor bill that has been easy.
Fuck no.
None of them are easy.
Especially with Vince.
Right.
Like none of them are easy. And halfway on all of them, I'm like, well, I don't know if this is going to pass, because it's hard. And then, once it passes, you got to make sure that there's a signature, and then you have to go make the case to say, look, it has to get a signature. Otherwise, we passed it, but that doesn't solve the problem,
right?
Yeah.
Right? And so I think it is incredibly important for folks to know that like there are a lot of good people who are fighting, right, for their families to get ahead.
Right. And
there are a lot of people who care. And that these are the fights that we are willing to get into and to like go,
right.
And so for me, like, I think that's something that like your members should know too, right? Is that this wasn't like we walked in and like patted ourselves on the back and it was fine, right? It was hard.
And to the point of Daniel's thing, our guys were sitting there for hours and hours after work to just stand up. That's all, to be recognized. Yes. Not even go speak at the fucking podium or at the table. Our opposition is paid to be there.
Yes.
They're paid to be there. And take any of our opposition.
But think about how powerful that is.
Yeah, that's the difference.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I want the elected officials
should know,
to know. Yes.
and your members should know.
This is the community.
That is powerful.
Fuck yeah, it is. And
that's not nothing.
Here's the thing with the hired
because
gun mob.
Because here's the thing. If they don't show up that way, right? If they don't show up and they're like, then the only people who are there are
the union crybabies.
The lobbyists who are paid to oppose it.
Yep.
And that's the thing. If you pay them enough, they'll come be on our side.
They'll switch sides.
Fuck yes. That's the truth.
They absolutely will.
That's the truth. I mean, that's their job, bro. That's what I try to explain to somebody. You don't understand. Like, you could I explain this to Daniel all the time. Like, you could be petty and hate anybody. The truth is, bro, they're getting paid to do this. Like, it's their job. And I have yet to see some. I mean, I've seen a couple people like we don't need to name drop because then I'm sure, but there's some people that will 100% just go and oppose union bills, and they're not getting paid or anything, but they're like legitimately like those are the people that go to city council fucking meetings or county commission and they're dressed fucking.
Well, I think because there's
weird.
This notion that somehow like if something is giving union jobs to folks, that we're just sort of fleecing the taxpayer. And that's my whole argument, right? Is that you're supporting the people who are literally building your city or making it run or making it operate, right? Like think about every facet of life that like a union may touch, right? It's going to impact you. If you are frustrated driving on the roads, then it is impacting you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think it is incredibly important that we continue to make that case that this does impact you, and that when we invest in good paying jobs and we pay people what they're worth and we give them health insurance and we give them the training and we give them the expertise to do this job, that you're actually going to get a better product and it's actually going to save taxpayers money in the long road because you don't have to do the job multiple times. You aren't going to have people who are showing up and then saying, oh, I'm getting a better paying job over here, so I'm out. Or people who get hurt and then can't come back to work, right? You're going to get more consistent and reliable work.
Skilled and trained workforce.
Yes. And so there has to be value in that. And I think there ultimately is. But unfortunately, I think there is this notion that if it is a union job, then we're just using too much of taxpayer dollars, you know?
But the problem is it's the taxpayers that are working on it. And
yes,
it's the taxpayers
it's the same people who are paying the
that are standing there going, hey, I want this. That's the taxpayer, and he wants a good paying job, right?
Yeah,
and so,
totally.
And especially like with prevailing wages, right? Like,
yes.
Non-union companies win those jobs all the time.
Yes.
Like a lot of the schools in this town, in my industry, non-union workers are getting paid very good money to be on this prevailing wage job. And so when we fight for that, we lift everybody, right?
Yes.
Everybody gets lifted up.
That's very true. Because there have been other projects, that have come up as discussion in the not so distant past where they're like, wow, that was built non-union. And you're like, but it was built prevailing wage. And so a whole bunch of workers were actually getting paid. And like, of course we love union jobs, and the unions are doing a great job of like getting their workforce skilled and trained and getting them out to job sites and making sure that there's some consistency for those members. And that's why it's so important to like be part of union membership, right? Because it gives you the ability to have that consistency and that sort of, assurances. But things like prevailing wage are ultimately important because we know that the union folks are going to pay that, right? So we know people are getting paid well. And if along the way, non-union shops are also now going to pay their workers, like that is going to help people.
Right. And it closes the gap between our contractors who are actually paying a livable wage and providing benefits.
It makes it a more
standard.
even playing field, right?
Yeah.
It gives people a fairer shot. And so that's why, I fought a lot for prevailing wage at the legislature and every project that we have done to fight to make sure that those prevailing wage, contracts are on every single facet of any sort of, project that we're putting forward. And then, making sure that we're abiding by prevailing wage. I mentioned Senate Bill 226, and there are a few other pieces of legislation, right, to make sure that we're abiding by prevailing wage, that if people are violating it, that there are additional tools to hold them accountable, right, so that people aren't sort of skirting the rules and they are paying people appropriately. And I think that's really important.
So that leads me to my next, obviously, as valuable as you are to us in the state legislature, you have decided that you want to leave and go to the Attorney General's office. So we are supporting you in that endeavor. And so you mentioned contractors or people skirting the labor laws. And I think a big issue that we've had as labor leaders in this area is we find contractors, union, usually non-union, who are robbing their workers, right? Stealing, wage theft. And they get slapped on the hand. There was a painting contractor here in town. Savannah Palmyra was our one of our organizers here. She's a rock star. She dinged, got the Department of Labor involved. A painting contractor owed their workers $3.6 million.
Yeah.
And he paid it and then went and bought a Cybertruck. And it just pisses me off.
With the paintbrush on the roof?
With a paintbrush on the roof.
That's the guy. I've seen that fucking truck, bro.
That's the guy. And it's like, how can you steal millions of dollars from workers and just walk around free?
Yeah.
That bothers me.
It should bother you. It should bother you because Nevada law is pretty clear about this, right? Like wage theft is theft.
Right.
It is a crime.
Yeah.
And it not only violates if they're on a prevailing wage project, it violates NRS 338 provisions, right? But it also is a criminal offense to steal from people and steal from workers, right? And so I think, I also think that that's why the Attorney General's office is such an important facet when it comes to union labor, right? Your guys are going to work every single day. They're working hard, right? They're showing up. Again, they're showing up. They're doing the hard work every single day without fail. These projects are getting built. People are getting paid. When the workers don't get paid, that is theft. And your workers know, right? Like your people know who is not paying what they should be paying, right? And so I think if you want to tackle that in a very real way, there are two things and things that I'm committed to doing as the Attorney General, right? First and foremost, you have to be able to build a case. And secondly, you need the right resources in order to do that, right? And so I'll start with the resources piece of this. So a lot of these are properly in the jurisdiction of the labor commissioner to do some investigations on, right? If you're going to put together a case, you need an investigatory agency that is not inside of the Attorney General's office, because otherwise you're making your own people who are filing and prosecuting the case also the witnesses on the case. You will be conflicted off of prosecuting that case, right? So you need a good investigatory arm to be able to take in the evidence and to say, hey, look, here's what we have. We're going to give it over to you.
Which should be the organizers.
What else? Yeah, look, it could be organizers, right? It could be people who are on the job sites who are saying that. It could even be folks who are working on the job and are like, hey, man, I'm working for this, but I think they're not properly doing the books. every case is different, right? We have had, and when I say we, I mean at the DA's office, right? Because I was a prosecutor for a long time. Now I work in civil litigation, which also requires you to put evidence together into a case and then, file. But we've had cases that come to us theft-wise, right? A number of different ways. Sometimes it's other employees. Sometimes it is an employer. Sometimes it's a customer. And you get some evidence, you investigate it, you start to build a case. So the Labor Commissioner's Office, for a long time, I think has struggled with having some consistent like DAGs who are with that division. And that's just because, frankly, the AG's office needs more people, right? They need some more resources in order to be able to do their job. And I think part of that is you have some of these DAGs who are giving advice, right, and who are helping to, guide agencies who are doing that job in a number of different agencies. And sometimes that's fine, but sometimes you just need a little bit more. And then I also think, we've heard budget presentations from the Labor Commissioner. They're doing a lot of work. I think they could use some more folks in that office to be able to kind of harness all of this and put it in a place where you then submit it, because that's kind of how a prosecution works, right? You submit the evidence from an investigatory agency to a prosecutor's office. And then that prosecutor's office can review what they have. They can say, hey, I think I need more of this. Hey, I need more of that. They can then start to build the case.
Right.
And then you have to be able to actually file a case, right? And so I think first and foremost, as AG, I'm going to work on making sure that the Labor Commissioner's Office has good resources and being a partner in that.
Right.
And then also on the AG side, making sure that we have the resources to be able to investigate and prosecute those cases. And then I think the other piece of this is you need somebody who's going to say, here's how we're going to take on that case, right? And that's why I think it is incredibly important for the AG to have actual litigation experience, right? When you talk about how are you going to put together something where you're saying, look, not a lot of these cases are getting prosecuted, you probably need somebody who can put together a tough case and who can do something that's sort of novel. And so at the DA's office, I had a case. It was like a stolen credit card case, right? This guy had a forged credit card in his pocket and he was arrested. And the whole arrest report kind of reads like a bigger investigation. So I go and call the detective and I'm like, hey, so I have this case. What's going on? He's like, oh, I can come and tell you about it. But, it's a whole thing. And I was like, that's fine. Just come to my office. So here he comes with like banker's boxes full of stuff. And he's got like a whole chart that's got, the lines and the webs between all these people. It ends up being a 13 co-defendant case. And we were thinking about like, how are we going to prosecute this, right? Because they're not a gang. How are we going to put this case together? How do we, instead of just, filing a bunch of different cases and then everybody gets off with a slap on the wrist, how do we put this together in a more complex fashion? And so we ended up figuring out that we could actually use Nevada's racketeering statutes to put together a criminal prosecution. So we filed a case against 13 co-defendants who were stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from people. They were running a whole fraud ring. And we were able to get convictions in that case. That doesn't happen because like somebody just happened to fall onto that case, right? You have to put in the work.
Oh, yeah.
You have to know what you're looking for. You have to know how you're going to structure it, how you're going to plead it, how you're going to put forward the evidence, who is more important and who is not. And when I think about wage theft cases, right, those are theft cases.
Yeah.
They are criminal prosecutions and also violations of other portions of Nevada law. So how do you put all of that together? You need somebody who knows how to put together complex litigation cases because you have to ultimately, if you're going to hold them accountable, we can't like send that person a letter and say, hey, so sorry, hope you pay your workers.
Right. Thanks.
Because they're going to be running around in a truck with a paintbrush on it.
Yeah.
But if you walk into court, listen, if you walk into court, people, and I think if you can say, we know who some of the worst offenders are, we can kind of make sure that we're going to hold people accountable, folks are going to stop abusing the system. Because if people know you're just going to get a slap on the wrist, then like what is my incentive to not try to skirt the rules?
Yeah, because they
especially
make money.
when everyone else is doing it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's why you need someone who has prosecutorial experience in that office.
Right.
I think that's why you need somebody who is skilled in putting together complex cases and helping to lead teams of attorneys who are actually going to do that work.
Yeah. That's what we need, because it's almost beneficial. Like, they know they can get away with it. Well, if I withhold their wages, I'm just going to make a bunch of money. If I get caught and I got to pay it back, I'll pay it back. But I've had that money sitting in my accounts building interest anyways. And so they still win.
Right.
You know, it's like,
you have to make sure that the incentive for them to get away with it is not there. Right.
Yeah.
And but you do that through having, I think, some skilled prosecutors put together cases. And I think that's why, you know, when I'm making the case about why I'm running for attorney general, like, what are the things that are important? You know, we have to hold people accountable where they're ripping people off. And wage theft is theft. And that is ripping people off. And that falls squarely within the duties, responsibilities, purview of the attorney general's office. And you need somebody who's ready, willing to go in there and, like, fight, right? Because these are fights. They're not, you know, they're not easy.
No. How do you feel your campaign's going?
I don't know. I feel pretty good.
Good.
Yeah. I mean, look, I have to say, because I know you mentioned this, Daniel, that I've got a lot of union endorsements. We're well over 40 different union endorsements in this race, which is incredible, right? And that's everything from construction workers to service employees to, you know, teachers, firefighters, law enforcement. There's a lot of support for this.
It's tough. You know how fucking hard it is to do be on this side of the table.
Yeah.
So and not only because, hey, we got two friends of labor, you know, your opponent and you, but it's also like, it's fucking tough because then it's like when you pick one or the other, then in today's political climate, that means the other person is the enemy. And I'm like, no, that's not the fucking case here. We're voting for Nicole. Whatever issues, they're not ours. They're not our issues to fucking go fucking burn down the house for. So trying to teach the members that piece of it too. Like, hey, man, you know, either one of these candidates could run for something else, and that we're probably going to endorse, you know, however the fuck it works out. It's tough, but y'all did not make it fucking easy for us.
I recognize.
I said it was like mom and dad's getting a divorce, and they're asking us who we can live with.
Who's the favorite?
Yeah, like,
I think. Look, I know it's tough, right? Like, and I've been in those situations before, right? I've been leading a caucus a whole bunch, right?
Yes.
Like, you gotta. It is hard. It's hard to be in that position, right? I think the thing, and I know I've said this to both of you and to a lot of your folks and members and everybody, like, at the end of the day, I think that if you have been in a position, right, where you've taken tough votes, where you have fought tough battles, where, like, you're saying, hey, there's all these guys who are trying to screw us over on a daily basis, and, like, there's someone who has done a lot of the hard things, there is no question about where I'm going to be in this fight, right? Like, there's no question.
Yeah.
You know, is she going to back down? Is she going to fold? Is she going to figure out a way to not do this? Like, the answer has been a resounding no, because for 10 years, you know, I've been running these bills, not just voting for them, because I think it's important that it's important that folks vote for them, but it's so important that, you know, you have a bill, that somebody's willing to push for it, that somebody's willing to go and say, hey, look, I need a signature on this bill.
Right.
That kind of stuff, you know, I think is just it's just a distinguishing factor. And we don't have to say, like, oh, well, the other person in the race is bad. And that's not the thing, right? Like, great. I'm glad that you are pro-union. Like, we should be, right? People should be. But you're saying, like, look, here's a candidate who has been in the tough things, has done the tough stuff. And so, you know, we're going to just say, we're going to go there for now and, you know, see how it all shakes out.
Yeah. I mean, I obviously appreciate everything you've done for us. You know, when making the decision, it's like you have been a proven champion of the labor movement, right?
Yeah.
You've gone to the mat for us. You've been through hell for us.
Yes.
I know that, right? And so, you know, it's. I hope the best for you. I really wish or hope that everything works out. We're going to miss you in the legislature, right? There's no one can replace you.
I'm just going to be down the street.
Okay.
And I'll be cllose.
That doesn't make me feel better.
I'll be
I want
close.
you to know.
I'll be close.
No, that's good stuff. What is the one thing that you wish you could have accomplished, that, like, the one that got away? What was the one? Do you have anything like that, like, in the ledge?
Oh, I mean, I think there's a few things that, you know, we have to come back and sort of deal with. And I had a bill that was vetoed last session, so, you know, that one's important.
Which one?
Well, that one was an IVF bill. But, you know, so I think of that. But I don't know, when it comes to, I mean, when it comes to union stuff, I'll say this, right now we're in the middle of, I don't know how to characterize this. I guess a disagreement over what it was that Senate Bill 226 covered and didn't cover.
Oh, fuck yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there's a few people who are still trying to say like, well, that's not really what this bill was supposed to do. So it's not that I wouldn't characterize it as like the one that got away. But that is on my list of things to go and fix next session because I want to be like crystal clear that there is no, you don't get to have a loophole, right? If it's a prevailing wage project, you pay prevailing wage.
This is the lease buyback, lease back.
Yes,
bullshit.
it's lease buyback stuff. And so now it's like, well, but if it's a lease buyback in this fashion, or if we do it this way, or, well, it didn't say this entity, or the language wasn't, you know what? We'll clarify the language. We're just going to make it crystal clear, because I thought we were crystal clear when we passed that bill in what it covered and didn't cover. I thought I was very crystal clear in what the intent of that bill was. And so, now there are folks who are trying to still skirt some of those rules and say, well, it wasn't supposed to apply to this type of prevailing wage project.
I feel like that's Warren Hardy again.
That's,
it's not.
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
No.
Well, we can blame him.
Yeah. But anyway, so I think about things like that, right? And then I think, there are also a few other, right, like union bills that haven't quite made it that I know are important that I'm sure will come back. But I also think that the fight for jobs is never over.
Fuck no.
Right?
What about the one piece of pro-union legislation that you passed? And it doesn't have to be a building trades piece. If it is, that's even better. But what is the one most thing you think you're proud of when it comes to labor passing? And I know it's on the spot.
I mean, I think if you want to talk about like foundationally, in 2019, which was my second session, is a session that I became majority leader, we put back into statute.
That's when Sean introduced me to you.
That's not how we met. That is not how we met. But I met you at Ironworkers.
I know.
Dude,
I'm just kidding. I'm just fucking
Jeez
around.
Louise. But that session, we restored a lot of the prevailing wage protections that had been stripped out of Nevada law. And you have to have that if you're going to build on all of these other things, right? And that was something that we saw happen, right, in 2015. And a lot of why I decided to run for office was I was like, look, man, you guys are not, you're not fighting hard enough for working people. We need some people in office who are going to go fight for this stuff. Because in 2015, the legislature got rid of prevailing wage, right? They got rid of those protections and they stripped those statutes. And so, that, and I was concerned about education, because I'm a big advocate of making sure that kids have an opportunity, right, to learn and to succeed and go do whatever it is they want to do. And that's how I kind of found myself going to public service, was kind of saying, hey, the legislature should be doing a better job. I can't believe this is happening. And they said, well, you'd be really great at running for office. And so, anyway, that's a long story short, but a lot of that is why I got to the point of running for state senate. And so I think for all of the other things that we've been fighting for to make sure that prevailing wage exists on other projects, if we're talking about, we just approved in special session money to both of the universities to upgrade the business school here at UNLV, right? Because they had a very tragic event there and that shooting, and they need to rebuild that building for a whole host of reasons, but that is certainly one of them. And then for UNR, their life sciences building has been there since, I want to say it's the 60s. It's old and
Project
run down.
labor agreements
Can't
on
use
those things?
PLAs on both of them.
Yeah, look at Chris Heavey. Call me back. Let's get this PLA signed. Stop fucking hiding.
But listen, we were very clear, right? Because they were like,
Chris Heavey, the president.
listen, we were very clear in that, right? And they said on the record multiple times during the legislative hearings, because I said, I'm not interested in doing this at all. I said this very clear. I am not going to do this unless we are going to have a PLA so that people can get paid appropriately, so that we can invest in you can't have universities saying we want to invest in opportunities for higher education and then say, well, we're not going to invest in skilled workforce and giving them the jobs.
That has a state registered apprenticeship.
Yes.
Through the higher ed system.
Yes. But, you don't get to things like that, or Senate Bill 226, or the number, the A Stadium that had a ton of PLAs. And, when we were in special session, I said, hey, you missed a few.
That was the best special session ever.
It was a long special session for me, man.
Fuck.
I was like,
The
newborn baby.
Yeah, bro. This is where I was like, Nicole is not a fucking human. The things she did that session, pregnant, had the baby
on the floor.
I was like,
right?
oh my God, dude, this is amazing. This is why she's such a fucking badass. Like,
is that when the governor called the special session immediately? Like,
oh, yeah.
Bro,
so I was like, look, this bill is not in a place where, because the bill came to us, right, and had unconstitutional language in it, and there was still some like, are we going to this side or that side?
Right.
There were PLAs hadn't been signed, or even MOUs hadn't been signed, right? Like when we got that bill, and I was like, okay, we just got out of session. Everybody go home. And then I sat in the legislative building with staff,
a newborn baby,
and with these guys, right? I called everybody. I was like, "Get in my office now. We got to talk about this." And I sat there for several days, with a newborn baby, trying to go through that bill and figure out, like, let's fix this language problem. Let's make sure that the bonding piece doesn't violate the Constitution. Let's figure out this piece of it. Okay, here's where I think we need to be. And then brought everybody in and started, talking to them about the votes. But when we got that bill, there were outstanding MOUs. There were, a bunch of crafts that still needed to get their stuff even figured out or signed or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was like, look, I'm going to tell you right now, I'll walk onto the floor and I will sine die if these don't get signed. Because what we're not doing is going to pass a big project like this, right, that I do think is going to be wonderful, right? I think that it's going to be great for the Strip. It's going to be great for tourism. It's going to be great for the economy. Like, I think there's a lot of pluses to this, and that's part of it. But at the end of the day, if you're asking me to do that, and we're not going to have highly skilled, well-paid healthcare, pension for workers who are going to build that thing,
right,
then I'm a hard no. Yep. And we'll just go home.
Actually, I have the numbers. I just got them actually from McCarthy. So he emailed me over the numbers, and I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. So let me take these off because I'm fucking getting old.
Aren't we all?
So 87.5% Nevada residents on that project. Yeah. 1.98% from Arizona, 8.72% from California. So, and then the rest is all less than 1%. Minority, women, veterans, disabled workers, 51% requirements, 122 subcontractors registered in the LCP tracker, approximately 1,378 craft workers, work hours, a shit ton. Minority, 72%. So we superseded that 51%. Because remember, they try to hit, when we were doing this, they were like, oh, we got to get like 40%. And I was like, put 51. We could fucking hit that easy, like, for sure. And we ended up getting 72% minority participation. 16,342 hours of female work hours on there. That's what it says. I'm just reading here, so don't fucking cancel me for calling them females. Veterans, 24,776 hours, 4%. Disadvantaged workers, 1%. So apprentice requirement, 15% with 5% first-year apprentices. We've hit 19.7%. So when people talk about these jobs and they don't do shit for Nevada, like, the fucking numbers are there, man. Like, and we superseded every mark that we hit, and we hit high marks on purpose. Yeah,
but that, I mean, look, that whole special session was, I mean,
that whole session was special. Bro, 23 was special.
Well, I remember
every session is special. Every session is special. Every special session is also special in their own ways.
I called that lady a Karen. Who is that lady? The opposition.
She's my friend.
Let's not call anybody Karens.
What?
But here's the deal.
She's my friend.
Look, here's the deal. We're not going to call it, guys. We're not going to call anybody Karens. Okay.
I didn't call anybody Karen.
I did on Twitter.
I know.
I called her on Twitter.
No. Look, at the end of the day, back to my original point. You don't get, I think, like, when you talk about accomplishments at the legislature, right, you can't have a lot of these conversations about big projects and how we're going to invest in jobs if you don't, have fundamentally, like, the prevailing wage statutes that are going to come and back all of that up, right, and hold people accountable and, like, put forward that stuff. And then, when we talk about big projects like the A's Stadium, and we're going to employ Nevadans, and these are, working people who are going home every day and able to feed their kids and have a roof over their heads, like, that's so incredibly important. Yeah. And that's, like, the kind of stuff where, I don't know. There's been a lot of folks who will say, well, you shouldn't have voted for that bill. But I have been very publicly supportive of it. Yeah. and have said, at the end of the day, like, this is a lot of jobs for real people. And that is something that as a legislator, I just have fundamentally come to this job with, believing that is part of our job.
If that job wasn't happening, 87% of the people are Nevadans working on that fucking whatever, and whatever the number was.
Right.
Unemployed. So
Yes.
people think the unemployment rate's high now, or that all like, oh, we need SNAP benefits. Yeah, we do. We would have needed more if these jobs aren't there. Like that's, and whatever. I don't want to get into that debate. If there was one thing that you wish you could, our members, is there anything that you want our members to know about you that you think they don't, or like a message or something about Nicole Cannizzaro?
Yeah, that I see them. Right?
Fuck yeah, you do.
Like, it's not just like, oh, I went and talked to Vince and so that's it, which is what we were joking about. I'm like, I remember meeting Vince like when he was just at the Ironworkers. You know, that's not, like, I don't come to this not seeing them, right? I'm not just looking for like an endorsement to slap on, a website. Like, I do come to this with my whole heart, and I do want them to know that.
Well, like the Build With Us rally, right? And I gave you a shout out and Elaine a shout out, and I think it was dope because I told Daniel this, and this is a message to all the fucking electeds out there. If you come to a building trades event, we're gonna watch how you interact with our members, our day-to-day members.
Yes.
Nicole was holding some random person's baby. Like, obviously it's one of our members, but it's like one of those things.
That seems like exactly right. No, it's true though.
Yeah.
It was honestly, that was one of my favorite events because, like, as elected official, like, of course we're all gonna go to the things, right? We're gonna speak. I'm at plenty of that stuff, but like, I got to kind of go to that and just like hang out with. And I said to somebody, I was like, this is not just a room full of other elected officials and people running for office. Because, you end up in those spaces. And those are good spaces to be in too, right?
Yeah,
and you have to go to them,
right.
and they are important, right? You have to be present in those places too. But to be present with just like
fucking
all of these people was amazing. We were walking in, they were just all there, and everybody was like, "Hey, we wear our shirts."
Everyone had a shirt.
Yeah. She had my shirt on.
I did.
Yeah.
I think I first ended up with a laborer shirt on,
which
and then
I didn't like very much.
I know, and then I caught some flack, so I had to get a DC-16 shirt, and I switched it up. It's fine.
Yeah.
But it was great, and honestly, like I met one of the laborers. Workers, and he had his family with him.
Yeah.
And he had his two daughters, and one of them, like, he's like, she wants to, be in politics and be a lawyer and all that stuff. So like, she just thinks you're awesome. And so I got to like meet with her and chat with her a bit, and she was amazing. And so we're gonna try to find. I gave him, my email address. I'm like, hey, like, I mean it. If your kid is interested in this job that I am doing, or any of the jobs that I am doing, like, we'll find something. And there really hasn't been too many exciting hearings to go to yet. But, my goal is to get her to come down to like the legislative building and get to see some of that.
That potentially is the next Nicole Cannizzaro, a daughter from hardworking parents. Well, and that's always the ultimate goal, right?
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. It comes back full circle.
Yeah.
The fucking work you're doing, from you sitting down in that diner watching these fancy lawyers come in, to you making your parents proud more than ever and fighting for fucking working families, to now inspiring the next fucking generation, Nicole. You're a big fucking deal, and I always give you your flowers, but I feel like I can never give you enough, man, because I'm so fucking proud to call you my Senate Majority Leader, my friend, my colleague, and thank you for everything you do. You are legitimately one of the baddest fucking people I've ever met in my life. You should be beyond proud of yourself, not just in the business world, not just in the political world, but also as a mom. I see you with your kids and the way that they interact with you, and the way that you're not overprotective and like, like you let the boys be boys, man. And I fucking love it. I love everything about it. Yeah.
They're
They're future ironworkers for sure, bro. Future ironworkers for sure.
They are gems. My little one is like getting to be bigger than the middle one, and like he's gonna catch up to the two of them because he is a tank, man.
Yeah.
And he has no fear. His older brothers are like, jump off of this chair, and he's like, okay, and I'm like, no.
See,
and he just goes.
That's the best.
But they're just amazing. They're the best part. Honestly, I love serving in the legislature. I obviously have a passion for it. I have a passion for public service. I was a public service attorney for a long time, which I loved, right? I loved being able to advocate for victims, right? Who are coming and looking for some sense of, restoring their normalcy.
Yeah.
You get to be a part of that, right? And you're also part of making sure that the justice system is fair in a lot of ways. And so all of that has been wonderful and incredible. But honestly, like, hands down, best thing, best job, best everything are those kids. Like, those boys are my whole heart.
In the end, this is what I've talked to Daniel about this. And in the end, that's the only thing that matters, because we have to give all this back. We have to give all this away. None of this is ours.
Yes.
Majority leader, that's yours right now. You're just being a steward of it.
Yes.
Right? If you go on and win the 100%. Attorney General, you have to give that back.
Yeah,
none of this is ours. He's not going to be the area rep. I'm not going to be the building trades guy forever. At the end of the day,
you just have to help make sure the path is a little more lit for the next 100%. Person, right?
But at the end, we all have to go back to our kids.
Like, I think I'll say two things about that. Number one, I'll start with the majority leader thing, because, I also serve as I am the first woman to hold this job.
Hell yeah.
I know I'm not going to be the last woman to hold this job, but like, I really, really, really have wanted to do a good job so that the next woman that steps up, nobody has to say like, oh, I don't know if they're going to be able to handle it,
Right. Yeah.
Like, and so and look, that doesn't mean I've done a perfect job, and it doesn't mean that there's not more work to do. It just means that I have recognized that as a steward of that position, I'm also occupying this space that I want to make more space for more women to do this, or for anybody really, right? It doesn't have to be, but I know I'm not going to be the last one.
Mm-hmm.
And so being the first, you want to do a good job. And I hope that I have done that.
You have.
And then, the other part of this is that, as a kid, like, we didn't have a lot, right? But I remember my mom always saying, like, it could always be worse,
Fuck yeah.
And so there were times where, like, she would make us go volunteer, right? Because she said, you have to give back to the people around you, and you have to recognize that, like, we might not have everything, right? You might not get new clothes, new shoes,
Right.
at the start of every school year, or you might only get one pair of shoes, you might not get 7, And there were times where, the struggle was harder. But she said, at the end of the day, there's always going to be somebody who has less than you. So you have to remember that. So let's go help them, right? So we went and collected donations of coats for kids and for women for the shelter, right? We went and served, food to seniors, and we went, and I remember there was, and I can't remember exactly if it was a church or something, but we were giving away Thanksgiving dinners, to families, like dropping them off a box on their doorstep with like all the fixings for a Thanksgiving dinner. Here you go, Thanksgiving dinner. And I remember that because, like, we didn't have a Thanksgiving dinner. My mom was still trying to figure out how to make it work.
Right.
And at the end of us going and helping, like, drop off some of these things to other families, we got a little. And I remember, like, that was, my mom tried to really instill that, like, you don't, just because you might have a different position, you can't forget about your entire community, right?
Yeah.
You have to remember everybody in it. And so I try to keep that in my brain when I think about, what we're doing as elected officials or what I get to do as a lawyer, because like most people, I always say most people don't come to a lawyer because they're having their best day.
Yeah.
And so you have to try to be a little bit of someone who's going to be like guiding in that way, and like recognize that, and, use, I don't know if this is going to sound cheesy, but like, use your force for good.
Yeah.
It's
a fact.
Like, I believe in this, and I say this, and then I'm going to give a shout out to one of my best friends.
Please.
So I love this phrase, do good, right? Do the most good. That's like, I've learned that in my college years and have sort of just maintained that. And I have a little plaque in my office that says, do the most good today. And I believe in that. And then the other day, my friend gave me a little patch. She's like, I thought of you. It says, do good recklessly.
There you go.
You just got to, sometimes you just got to get in there and do it.
Yeah, that's us, man. That's good shit. Well, I know we're running out of time.
Thank you so much for
Do you have anything you want to close with,
thank
Daniel?
you.
Closing questions, remarks?
No, I just I appreciate everything that you've done for us.
Nah.
And so here's to many more years of this partnership of you working for us, and
Yes.
I can't thank you enough.
No, thank you.
Thank you for everything you do. You know, I'll always have your back to the
thank you.
fucking end of time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right.